Welcome into the first edition of Press Coverage, the millionth edition of the show that's formerly known as On the Beat. I'm Tommy Ashley, Jeremiah Holloway, Evan Rogers, Adam Smith. We are sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity. Gentlemen, we have a new name, so we got that taken care of. That was stressful. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, it shouldn't be that stressful. I thought I was naming a kid, and in a way, we are, because this is our baby. First thing I want to do, and I mentioned it to you guys off the air, I want to talk about the hurricane stuff. Folks, donate your time, your money, your supplies. Get it to wherever you are locally. I took a bunch of stuff to the local sheriff's department. They're delivering it this week. Do whatever you can to help folks out there. I know a lot of people have friends and family and loved ones that are in the middle of it. It is nuts. And it's not just North Carolina. It's up and down the southeast from the Gulf Coast of Florida all the way up to Tennessee and beyond, and do something to help. Don't do anything. Don't not do anything. Title of today's show is Just Fix It. Are we good with the title of the show today, guys? Everybody. Jeremiah, is that appropriate, right? Seems appropriate?
Yeah.
Adam and Evan nodding their heads. We're going to go first to the clips like we've been doing.
How you going to fix it, TA? How you going to fix it? Seems like there's a lot to fix.
Well, you got to do something. Let's listen to see what the people that are in charge of fixing it had to say on Monday.
You go max protection anyway. That's what you do. It's just and again, if I sit here and tell you exactly what's wrong, then I'm throwing somebody under the bus, and I'm not going to do that. It's all my fault. We just met for an hour and a half again this morning, and it will get fixed. I thought it was fixed, but it will get fixed 100%. And really and truly, the Huzzy made an unbelievable play. If they don't grab his face mask, he probably scores, picking the ball up on the goal line. That was so heads up. And our kickoffs, we've Liam Boyd's out. Have we even said that? Liam Boyd's out he'd be lower body. And I don't think he'll play the rest of the year. So we've got Lucas Asada that's kicking off. So, I mean, it's just been a combination of stuff. And Lucas did a good job Saturday. He kicked a couple of them all the way out of the end zone, and he's got a great leg. So we'll look at him at punter as well this week as we go, because he's a really good punter. We just don't want to overload him.
Whew, that's a big one. Let's find another one. Hold on a second, Adam. I got another one for you.
I think the beginning of the game and really the first 2.5 quarters of the game, I thought our guys played physical. They played clean. We fit gaps really well. We tackled at a high level. We were disguising the back end really, really well, and just played up to that point, played a really complete start to the football game, and was really, really proud of them. Second half, some things started happening, slipping away from us. It's my job to get them back on the sidelines and get those things cleaned up and corrected faster than I was able to do. But just the effort from the guys, how hard they played, how dialed in they were the entire game, was proud to coach them. Just some things, when things started happening negatively, we're going to stop doing this, have a tendency to try to do too much and try to do things outside of the framework of what our individual responsibility is. And last night we had a long unit meeting, went through the 12 plays that affected the game. 8 of those 12 plays were a result of missed tackles. And some of the missed tackles were just a result of somebody or 1 or 2 guys trying to do too much and were mispositioned, and it affected somebody else that needed to make the tackle, not make that tackle.
Oh boy, one more. We're going for the trifecta here. We're getting Chip Lindsey on. And by the way, Adam, Jeremiah, and Evan are each taking a problem. So I'll let the elder statesman Adam pick which problem he wants first. But let's get Chip Lindsey in here. Join in the fix it problem.
I think we've got to, probably got to. I got to do a better job of getting some other guys in there to take some relief on it. It's hard when you have a great player like him. He's a warrior. He wants to play every snap. that's what he is. I mean, he has the ability to come out anytime he wants from the standpoint of, he's gassed during a drive or whatever, and he's a huge part of what we do. But we got confidence in some other guys, so I got to do a better job of probably taking a little bit of a load off him. And, we want to be a run, play, action team. That's what we want to be, but we need to be better in some other areas to help take some of that load off of him for sure.
All right, Adam, get in here. Your number one problem they need to fix. We've heard going on 2 weeks now. Well, I'll leave it at that. Going on 2 weeks now that there have been issues that needed fixing. We've heard Mack say it repeatedly. We've heard Chip and Jeff in their short time say it. But Adam, your take on the number one thing that this North Carolina team and this coaching staff needs to get fixed ahead of Pittsburgh.
I thought you were going to say going on 6 years when you said
Well, I was.
Yeah.
But I'm this positivity Tommy tonight.
And your Durham Bulls shirt looks great. Let's be honest.
That's a classic.
Yeah, I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, you're right. MILB, baby. It occurred to me that when I was listening to Jeff Collins, I don't know if our audience knows this, but maybe one of the more interesting things Jeff said the other day was he complimented Jeremiah's hair, how great Jeremiah's hair looked. Which was a nice way to get started when you're about to go through all that mess. Well, guys, for the purpose here, I hope I'm not going to screw up Evan and Jeremiah because we haven't talked about which problems we're going to take. I think we've studied it all pretty good.
In-game adjustments, they're key on these shows.
Right. And I will say, I don't think, obviously, after UNC gave up 70 points to JMU, and blew a 20-point second half lead at Duke. I don't think that punting and penalties probably are the number one bullet point of things that's got to get fixed immediately. But to me, this sort of just speaks to those areas, sort of speak to a larger issue. And I was thinking about it tonight, guys, that, I sort of want to talk as a UNC football fan. Like I know that our audience are diehard fans. And if you are a UNC football supporter, I would think that these things, like a block punt for a second game in a row, which, oh, by the way, is the 5th time they've had a punt blocked in the last 15 games. Great research by Evan. This is the stuff that makes you want to pull your hair out. I mean, this is the stuff where when Mack comes in on a Monday and says, we're meeting about it. We're looking hard about it. We're having hard discussions about it. If you're a UNC football fan, you want to say, well, why the hell is it not fixed? You can meet all you want to. You can study it all you want to. But my God, it's the same damn things. Evan dug it up. I encourage everyone to go read Evan's story about the punting problems that are plaguing UNC. UNC has had 9 punts blocked since 2019 when Mack came back for Mack 2.0. 9. It's the most in college football. Now, I know Mack ain't snapping the ball and trying to punt the ball, and I know there's different special teams coordinators, the whole thing, but my God, it's systemic in some ways at this point. And I mean, honestly, when Carolina goes to punt the ball on a 4th down, anything could happen. I mean, the chaos is possible. Now, the almost funny thing is, as we all know, the punt they got blocked at Duke the other day, they end up recovering because Duke screws it up, and they went down and kicked a field goal. So it became a scoring drive. But I just think that, by the way, UNC, there are 133 teams in the FBS. UNC is number 126, 7 from the bottom in the FBS in penalties, 9.2 penalties per game. This is how you shoot yourself in the foot. It's maddening. I mean, that a block punt is how Ben Kernan's career ended last year. It was an amazing individual effort. Jeremiah did a great story when he talked to him the next day about it. But again, I just think that did the block punt at Duke lose the game for them? Absolutely not. It ended up working out. But it's just when you have the same guys back there as the shield, Malik McGowan, Jonathan Adorno, the same guys that screwed it up last year. It's just, it's the stuff you want to bang your head against the wall. So that's where I'm going with it, is that I feel you, Carolina football fans. And, that double thud when you hear a blocked punt, I'm sure there's some groans, man, because you want to say, how the heck is this even happening? So that would be my piece on it, TA.
Yeah, I don't know how it keeps happening. Jason Staples did a good breakdown of it. JMU did it. Duke said, maybe Carolina look at it, but let's see if we can get away with doing the exact same thing. And to Mack's point in the presser with a follow-up, I believe to you, talking about that, is it's not the same thing as it was last year. Something different. It looks the same. And it looks like it's the same thing over and over. Interesting enough, somebody look up Cole Maynard, former punter at North Carolina that left. Jeremiah, I'm going to give you the next problem to fix. Adam snuck penalties in there, so penalties still available. Evan, what do you want?
Let me add something real quick about the punting thing. I think one of the biggest issues that I have from it, and Adam laid it out perfectly in that, it's a systemic thing that kind of speaks to the decision makers and the adults behind it. I don't understand this idea, and this is a Mack thing. I get it. This is kind of who he is as a person. The whole, I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, so I'm not going to reveal what the issue is, per se. Is it going to take the 6th blocked punt in 16 games to throw that person under the bus? I mean, I guess where is that fine line of, hey, I can actually talk about this to the media, to the public, because clearly this isn't something that you can say is a 1-off, a 2-off, a 3-off, a 4-off, etc. I mean, it is just, like Adam pointed out, it's systemic. And though it's not something that directly is the reason they lost the game, it snowballed into UNC had to go into max protect on their punting, and McGinnis had to go from his Aussie rugby style punt that you see all these Aussie punters do, because that's the rugby style. That's what they're taught at the academy over on Australia. And he had to do more of a traditional, just one step and boot. And on those 4 punts, he averaged under 34 yards a punt. And one of them was a 20-yarder that I could argue was a generous spot. When the ball goes way out of bounds and it hits somewhere on the sideline, you see the official running up to the sideline. They're just going to pick an even 5 or 10 yard line and say it's going this way. The official could have ran up probably an additional 5-10 yards, but that set up the short field that Duke ended up scoring their game-winning drive on. And the defensive struggles were the defensive struggles. If Duke had 70 yards to drive, would they have still scored? Probably, but it's those little things that really can change a game. And it reminded me of the Virginia game last year when UNC was upset at home. And in that game, I went back and looked, McGinnis had 5 punts and he averaged under 33 yards a punt. And 2 of Virginia's touchdown drives were less than 55 yards to drive. So even when they're not getting blocked, they're still setting up short fields way more often than it should be. And it's this idea of, we've got it taken care of. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, where I think that messaging problem is really kind of frustrating for some people to hear. Because at the end of the day, you're the worst in the country in the last 5-6 years. Maybe you should throw someone under the bus. Maybe you should give us an explanation of what's going on. What is wrong? I mean, where is that line of where you're going to be like, okay, we've got our 7th blocked punt in the last 2 years. I'll finally reveal what's going on. So I think that's where just the messaging has kind of there's been a disconnect there, I think, with this issue for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mentioned Cole Maynard earlier. Cole Maynard, former North Carolina player, kicks at Western Kentucky now. I don't know if you guys even know this. He averages 47.5 yards a punt. 50 plus, he has 8. Inside the 20, 3. Only 1 touchback in all those. The kid is balling out at Western Kentucky after being surpassed in the portal in the depth chart, I guess, at Carolina. I don't want to speculate as to why he's not at Carolina, but the bottom line is he is not at Carolina. He is at Western Kentucky doing very well. Shout out to Luke Buxton in the chat. one of Evan's heroes, another Inside Carolina intern that has made it pretty well. So we have punting, and it's a major issue. I think special teams is third part of the game, right? The third half of the game. If you're constantly losing that, you're losing a third of the game. And yeah, Jeremiah, what's your issue here, my friend?
Yeah, well, definitely shout out to Adam for leaving the defense and offense available for sure. Gotta give me some places to go with it. Also, Tommy, I also like the Durham Bulls shirt. We got to get some press coverage shirts. That's what we need to do. We need to get some shirts that have press coverage, and that'll be our uniforms, I guess. But yeah, for me, I was actually going back and forth of choosing the defense and the offense. There is an offensive point I want to get to later, so for now, I'll just go with the defense and specifically defensive cohesion. And I think it's cohesion in two different senses. One is like the cohesion of all 11 guys on the field, and then the other is like the cohesion, like a game cohesion of like playing a complete 60-minute game, how many ever snaps. And I'll start with the first part. I think against Duke, what you saw was, of course, in that first half, they were really giving, Malik Murphy really struggled that first half the other day. Like he really was not accurate. And then, the run game didn't even open up like that. And so you go into halftime, you pitch a shutout. Like you pitch a shutout in the first half. And the offense, did enough to make it a 3-possession game, if you will. But I think what we ended up seeing later in that half was, I mean, and we talk about this stuff after the game. I know Adam was talking a lot about it. Like, yeah, usually if a team is coming back, it's through the air and things like that. They were just giving it to Star Thomas and letting him go to work. So when I was watching that the other day in real time, and then when I was kind of going back and looking at it, one thing I observed was the pressure that you saw up front in that game. Even if you want to go back to those first, few games of the season, like, I thought against Minnesota, that front was really good. But even if you just say the first 30 minutes of Saturday, I didn't feel like the defensive front was as effective getting back there and causing havoc as they were in that second half. We already know the numbers as far as, how many rushing yards they gave up in each half, but it was kind of the way that it happened, I think. And when I was going back and looking through it today, it was just a lot of, missed tackles. And there was one play, it was a 1st and 20, and Star Thomas, I believe it was Star. He had it and he's going up the right sideline and he went past like 4 guys, that had the opportunity to kind of take him down. Now, one thing that the coaching staff one thing that, Collins was talking about yesterday and some of the players were talking about today was, kind of the missed assignments or, quote unquote, maybe one individual doing too much and it leading to other things. I think the way that was particularly manifested on Saturday was how many missed tackles you saw. It wasn't as much like how we saw against JMU where guys were just getting beat over the top with all those athletes. It was less of that. It was more of just in that backfield, guys just, going up the middle, going up the sideline, and, they couldn't necessarily stop it. So I think one thing that needs to be, certainly addressed within that team, and it sounds like that's one thing that they do want to talk about is, I think Huzzy said the word needing to over communicate on defense. So really making sure everybody knows, because that's one thing that they talked about a lot. They were saying, everyone on the field knows the assignment of each guy and things like that. So we were hearing that before the season started and even in the early season. I think the last 2 games, it seems maybe that's something that they've gotten away with. If you could put a explanation to it, maybe they're just one thing I think I've noticed as well is like in that JMU game in the second half the other day, it's like if an offense starts getting momentum, it kind of spirals, like it has the tendency to, spiral on the defense. So they just have to figure out ways to, if a team does get some momentum, if a team does go on a run, to kind of hold them off. And then the last point that I will make on that, as far as, defense playing a whole game, this is an offense that's still trying to figure itself out. So, you're kind of asking more out of your defense to be like, hey, if you can hold this team to 20 points and let this offense like try to, win late. That's essentially what happened against Minnesota. Obviously, they missed a kick at the end, but basically that's what it came down to. It was like, can the defense keep the other team at bay enough for offense, because I think the form of UNC this year is going to be, winning ugly and winning more of those, grinded out games. So can you allow the offense to get you 25, 26, maybe hold the other team to 20? Again, it's kind of asking a lot if you're asking for that this week, particularly, after, a couple losses in a row where there were some spurts in games that got out of hand. But yeah, I think the main thing is, finding a way to get the defense to, have a strong 4-quarter game, not, and get off the field effectively and efficiently. And I think that would, even with the offense that's still figuring itself out, I think that would actually go a long way for this team.
Absolutely. Defensive struggles. I mean, Adam, you pointed out to me, I had forgotten. I asked Collins about that after JMU. Is like, these guys have been here before where it starts sliding and they don't know how to stop it. And he talked about the difference this year. And then we sort of saw it against Duke. I mean, it's the same players. Everything is the same virtually at the very tip top and at the very bottom. The crux of the team are the players and the head coach. And virtually everything else has changed on this team. It's an interesting thought when you're thinking about what we're talking about, folks. Evan Rogers, they stole your punting, even though you got your edge words in there to talk about your stats. Jeremiah's hit the defense, which I think is a big issue for this team. One that after Minnesota we did not see coming. Felt a lot like last year in South Carolina. So where are we going here, bud? You need to pull a rabbit out of the hat here.
I've got stats for everything. Come on now.
And one thing about the defense, Jeremiah, to your point, hold on, I'm sorry, I stepped right on you. Manny Diaz talked about they stayed in a light box, and we just kept right on running. I mean, I don't understand that. That's on Collins,
That's my thing. It's the UNC blew a 20-point lead. It's the year 2024. Duke scored 21 unanswered points to win the game, and they did it by running the ball. They didn't throw the ball all around the yard. It was like, it was ground and pound.
Malik Murphy completed 8 passes in the second half.
He was not good.
To come back from a 20-point deficit.
In light boxes all night.
And what you just said, TA, just real quick, I'll get out of the way, but you're talking about, it's the same people. I think that adds to the maddening aspect of it all. It's deja vu all over again. Insert your Groundhog Day reference. That's what Jeremiah and I were asking some of the guys today. Like, so many people are saying same old UNC defense. Except, it's early in the season now. It's not at the end of the season. But I will hush and let young Evan talk.
Yeah, and I am not criticizing the players. Folks need to understand that. The players are what they are. They were recruited there. They've been coached there. So, yeah, Evan, you're up.
Yeah, for the offense, I think it's 2 things that I think people are pretty concerned about through this first almost half of the year. It's obviously the idea of Amari Hampton getting a really hefty workload. I think he had over 70 snaps the other night at Duke. And I think that issue is compounded with what UNC has at the offensive line. So Amari Hampton on pace right now is averaging about 23 carries a game, which is up to where he was at 18 carries a game last year. So almost 5 more carries a game, which will add up as the year moves along. But what this UNC offensive line has proven through 5 games, or at least shown, especially outside of the tackle spot, is it really struggles in pass protection. And I think you've really seen that be exposed these last 2 weeks against James Madison and Duke. Pro Football Focus had Trevion Green graded out as a 0 passing grade against Duke. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Can't get any lower than that. And this offensive line is a unit that they talked a lot about in the preseason as a group they thought could be improved. And they talked how big the offensive tackles looked. They talked about adding a guy like Austin Blaski, who comes from a program in Georgia where he's won 2 national championships. They talked about how you have Willie Lampkin back for a second year in the program, who was by far, and most people would assume, the best offensive line last season for Carolina. But I think what maybe wasn't discussed from the coaching staff, but definitely observed from, us and just people on the outside is this was an offensive line that just was young across the board outside of Willie Lampkin. Your tackles, Howard Sampson and Trey Green, had 134 combined college snaps before this season. You add in Aiden Banfield, who's a true freshman. So you have 3 offensive linemen coming into this season who have played combined less than 150 college snaps. Then you add in Austin Blaskey, who, yes, he's in his 5th year of college football, but he didn't start his first game until this season. So that's 4 guys who are basically playing or definitely starting their first years of college football. And with that, you're going to get these bumps in the road. It's just natural. It's what's going to happen. And I wrote a story on the offensive line the other day, and in fun, I just wanted to look this up. I didn't include it in the article because I didn't want to put salt in the wound or anything like that. But I wanted to see how Diego Pounce was doing this year at Ole Miss, because obviously that was a big topic, him going to Ole Miss, and that was one of the reasons why UNC went out and got Howard Sampson. It's obviously a reason why they're relying on Trey Green to maybe play a bigger load this year than maybe they were hoping last season. And according to Pro Football Focus, on the season, Howard Sampson is a 61.4 grade, Trey Green is a 64.5 grade, and Diego Pounce is a 78.1. And that would be the second highest grade on UNC's offensive line this year behind Willie Lampkin. So when you lose that kind of a talent and you replace it with guys who are young, inexperienced, obviously massive, this is where those bumps in the roads come. I mean, you saw Duke's edge rushers, especially those speed guys, especially on that last drive. I mean, I get you're running deeper passing routes and slower developing stuff, but they were getting to Jacoby Criswell pretty quick. And when you can't pass the ball, when you're struggling in pass protection, that's when you have to rely on that running game a lot. And that's when obviously they're going to lean on Amari and Hampton, because I know Davion Goss had a good game against Charlotte, but at the end of the day, he's a true freshman. And UNC is going to rely on their workhorse back. And Amari and Hampton is a guy that, they talk about how, he doesn't want to come out. He's a workhorse, et cetera, et cetera. So they're going to pretty much ride him until, he can't keep going this year. And I just think they're limited at the offensive line in terms of pass pro. I think Pro Football Focus has them as the second worst pass blocking offensive line in the conference, but the best run blocking offensive line in the conference. So that kind of paints the picture as what they want to be this year. They're going to have to still find a way to work with the tackle deficiencies in the passing game. That's something that, the coaches can scheme up and figure out. But for the time being, I just think they're going to have to rely on Amari and, more than maybe they want to.
I freely admit after the Duke game, I said I thought Amarian needed more carries, especially the way the passing game was going. But looking at the NCAA stats, and with the caveat, if these are wrong, it's because they're wrong on the NCAA website. Amarian's got 114 carries, which leads the nation, best I can see. He has 18 plus 14? 32 more carries than Genty or Caleb Johnson from Boise State and Iowa, who have more yards than him. He is getting the predominance of the carries, not just at Carolina, but in the country. And you've got Davion Goss now. Darwin Barlow was supposed to be a guy, but realistically, is he going to be a guy at all this year? We'll see. He looked the part in spring. Adam, you asked about him.
I was going to say, TA, I think just to add to sort of add to what Evan's saying, I think, and I'm not faulting the young man for being injured, but I think Darwin Barlow, we've played 5 games this season, he has had 1 carry at Minnesota. I think that is a huge disappointment for UNC as a whole. I mean, this was a guy that they sold him in the portal on being a downhill running team. You're built like a Morion. We're going to use you to spell him. We're going to go thunder and thunder, not thunder and lightning. And Chip Lindsey said it the other day openly. Yeah, going into the year, I had thought maybe 20 to 25 touches would be what we'd want for Amarian. Well, he's at 25.4 touches a game. He's got 127 touches between rushing attempts and catches in 5 games. I mean, damn.
That's a lot.
And Evan,
that doesn't include
Go ahead.
That
I'm
doesn't
sorry.
include the pass blocking he's done.
Right. All the collisions. All
Yep.
the collisions. And Evan has all the numbers, the PFF grades on these linemen, which, are jarring. But I mean, I would just say to our audience too, think about just the optics of it. When you're watching these games, how many times do you see Howard Sampson or Travion Green going the wrong way or just like in the way? I mean, Howard Sampson literally almost tackled John Copenhaver on that touchdown, that little tight end screen that they scored on against Central. And they're running plays too. And I know these guys are huge. I get it. I get it. But, the optics of it, I just don't think are good. And some of the comments in the chat are just, I think, just spot on with, they're getting beat with speed off the edges. You have a quarterback back there in Jacoby Criswell, who I think is competent enough to get the job done. But, he's extremely inexperienced, and they're heating him up. What do you think Pitt's going to do? What do you think Pat Narduzzi's going to do on Saturday? You know what he's going to do. Think about this. Heck, 2 years ago when Pitt came in here, they had Drake May bleeding. The Elijah Cansey dude, who was a number 1 pick in the NFL draft, they ejected him for targeting.
Des Evans got hurt that game for the year, right?
Yeah, I think Des was lost in the first quarter. I think Noah Taylor was lost in the first quarter too. It was a bloodbath.
The line of scrimmage is going to be physical.
It was a
it's going to be physical.
And Drake May won the game for him. They won the game going away because Drake May and Josh Downs are 2 bad mofos. But anyway, those are just some random thoughts. I cannot get out of my mind sometimes the sight of Howard Sampson or Travion Green in the way. And so Marion Hampton is trying to get through there or something like that that's going on.
Yeah, a couple things there. I don't think we can overstate not having Clements around 24/7 around these guys. And that is something that is unfortunate and just, terrible for Randy trying to get healthy. And then as a byproduct of that, these young guys not getting the coaching directly from him. Corey Gaynor and Kyle Fuller, those guys are Fuller's good at what he does, but there's a difference in a grown man getting on you and trying to motivate you and teach you versus one of your contemporaries for all intents and purposes. So you got a lot going on there. But yeah, Sampson and Travion Green have potential. They need to be in yoga classes. They need to be in ballet classes, things like that, to improve their footwork and their agility. And just, they figure that part out of it, and they can be monsters. But until you can block somebody coming off the edge, we heard, right, is before Kamen Rucker got hurt in the spring that they couldn't block him. Well, we see why, because he'd bend the edge and get up underneath them. But it wasn't just Rucker. It's been a lot of people. Jeremiah, I feel like you've been the quiet one. We're not going to go for a full hour here. I've asked folks in the chat, but your thoughts here on these 3 issues, and I'm going to ask you the $64,000 question. Are they fixable by who's in place during this season? Because Pittsburgh and Georgia Tech are going to come in swinging for the head of North Carolina, and has the potential to be quite interesting starting at noon this Saturday and at noon the following Saturday. What do you think?
Yeah, I think those 2 are tough ones, even having them at home. Obviously, we know what Georgia Tech over this last few years, what that matchup has been like for UNC. And even last year's Pitt game, Pitt got off to a really good start at home last year. And I know they're a pretty different, offense and, new quarterback and everything else. But, even still, considering what they were last year, my thing is this. I think these next 2 games are tough, but I think the last 5, UNC is actually pretty decently positioned to have a okay finish. And it's interesting, Mack Brown was talking the other day of he felt the team was, built to, finish out well and things like that, or finish better than teams in the past have. So one thing I was looking at the other day, and I have it over here, UNC's November record since Mack Brown has been back is 10-9. So it's 2-2 every year except for 2020. I guess the schedule, you move it back a little bit. So they were 2-1 in November in 2020. If you shift it up to October, you're looking at 13-7. So, a little bit better. So essentially what I'm saying is, that middle of the season, things kind of get a little rocky, and then like late in the year it gets tough. But like, I don't know, just looking at their schedule, when you have now some of the teams that they do play them on the road, and it's never easy to necessarily go on the road. The most concerning game I think they have in that last 5 is going to be at Boston College. But other than that, you have Virginia and Florida State, both on the road, sure. But then you host away, and then you host NC State. Those games are winnable. Now, the key for UNC, I think, is going to be to I'm not going to say find an offensive identity, because I think they know what it is. I think it's like a matter of executing it and a matter of getting in a flow with it. So their offensive identity is, as Adam was saying with Amari and Hampton's touches, like getting him the ball and getting him the ball in space to where he can operate. That's essentially what the offense is and what it's supposed to be. But I think to go along with that, what can Jacoby Criswell do to, kind of get in his rhythm? I mean, right now you're looking at, 57% completion rate. There's factors that go into that. He had to air it out a lot against JMU and things like that. But I don't know, is there almost a way where you can lower his, pass attempts and get him some efficient passes to, kind of keep drives going and sustain drives? Because yeah, like in a perfect world, they're giving Amari the ball, and it's funny, like we bring up his touches. It almost feels like they've needed like every one of those. Like, you probably wouldn't want him to have, the amount that he has currently. What is it, 127? You probably don't want him to have that right now, but he's kind of had to, just to stay around and stay alive in some of these games. So I think they know what their identity is. It's just a matter of finding a way for it to click. It hasn't done that yet. I think that's probably the advantage that this team has over the teams from the last couple of years, where it's like it hit a peak and then it kind of unraveled a little bit. This team offensively, and I know they're probably a little bit, I would say they're more limited than the teams they've had in recent years, but I still don't think this offense has played to the best of its ability yet. I don't think it's quite got to that point under Criswell, because you have to remember, the Charlotte game was obviously with Connor Harrell. So under Criswell, I don't think they've hit a peak yet, or they haven't hit their peak. So that's probably the best thing it has going for it right now. If you got one of these next 2 games, I feel like you would be stealing essentially one of those games. I think either winning either game would put you at, like, let's say you went 1-1. Like, if you found a way to do that, well, you would go into the bye over 500, and then all of a sudden you're looking at those last 5 games, and maybe you can figure it out, do something from there. But yeah, I think the way that the team is constructed, and honestly the way the schedule is constructed, it can finish better. I think the next 2 games they're gonna be a pretty good test, just based on the way that because like Evan mentioned, like, the way Pitt likes to play defense against the offensive line that's still figuring itself out. That's going to be a lot. And then the history against Georgia Tech, even though they're not an invincible team or unbeatable team, I mean, that's going to be a lot, considering the past history. So, yeah, the best things that UNC has going for them is these 2 games, or 2 of the tougher games you're going to have on the schedule. They're both at home, and then that last stretch after that bye week, even though they have a second bye week after that, the last stretch, winnable games against beatable teams. So we shall see how this whole thing shakes out down the stretch, as this team still is figuring itself out, almost restarting in a way. It felt like those first 3 games, I didn't try to put too much stock into them because they're so early, but almost seemed like they at least had decent habits. I think probably in that Central game you saw like a few flaws and a few cracks, but it seemed like they could at least figure some of that stuff out. But so we'll see. They have they have more than half the season to go, which is crazy. Me and Adam were talking about it. It feels like it's been much longer than 5 games, but they still have more than half of the season to go with this thing.
Indeed, it does. Before I get out of here, I got some numbers. Evan, I'm going to steal your numbers. Carolina's 126th in penalties in the country. They are 100. No, they're, what did I say? They're almost last in punting, Omarion leads the nation in touches. Davion Goss needs to play more, in my opinion, since Barlow's on the hook. A lot to fix. The question is, can they fix it? I'm getting out of here, guys. This is press coverage, so we go quick. We're not going to run it out an hour. I know folks have things to do and the Braves are on. So we got to pay attention to that. Shout out Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity, our sponsors, Johnny T-Shirt, johnnytshirt.com. Sponsors of this, you get 10% off your order if you're a Tar Pit Premium message board holder. Somebody early in the chat asked for more basketball content. It's coming, folks. Basketball's not here yet. We got plenty of football left. Adam, Jeremiah, and Evan are enjoying just one sport at the moment because crossover season comes and it all goes in the blender. But Basketball Media Day is Friday, so plenty of content coming there. And also Congruity, Matt at congruityhr.com, another sponsor of this. Email him, get your assessment. Boys, I'm going to let you off the hook early. I think the number one thing that North Carolina needs to fix is the accountability. Accountability from the top down. If there's a bus that somebody needs to go under, you need to put them under the bus. And that includes from the top down. It's college football. You raise men, you make better people, but the goal is to win football games in this high money world we live in, and North Carolina certainly lacking the last couple of weeks in that. Pitt Saturday at noon, Georgia Tech the following Saturday at noon. It's either going to happen or it's not, and we'll see what it does. Adam, Evan, Jeremiah, appreciate it, fellas.